depending where you are, as I said, good morning, afternoon, evening. I'd like to start by thanking Mattia Vagali, Yen Lui, Kusum Napsik, and Germain Chauffard for organizing this talk with me. I'm Eileen Anderson, and we are part of the Multilingual Disinformation Study Group. And if you're interested in being a part of our study group, please contact one of us. You don't have to be a language professor, but you're all welcome. Okay, so now I want to welcome our speaker, Craig Silverman, who I know you're all here to see. I'm just going to give you a short little bio. There's so much to say, of course, right? But Mr. Silverman is the editor, the media editor of BuzzFeed News, and was the founding editor of BuzzFeed Canada. He's an award-winning journalist. I don't even have time to mention all of them, and an expert in online misinformation, fake news, and content verification. His 2019 series, which exposed a global Facebook advertising scam, was named Investigation of the Year by the Canadian Association of Journalists. Most recently, Mr. Silverman along with colleagues, edited the Verification Handbook and the Verification Handbook for Investigative Reporting for the European Journalism Center. There's a mouthful. These are free online workbooks that offer guidance. I'm going to put the link to the PDF in the chat as well. And they help people learn how to investigate disinformation and media manipulation. He's also the author of the award-winning book, Mafia Boy. Please welcome Mr. Silverman.
Thank you, Eileen. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. And what an interesting, but also very relevant and necessary thing to have a multilingual disinformation discussion group. I haven't encountered one before, and as I think you'll see from the presentation, it makes a lot of sense. And so I'm excited to kind of share a little bit with you about a little bit of the work that I and some colleagues have done, but really kind of give you a sense of, I've been in this field for, I guess, a decade or more, and give you a sense of what I consider to be some of, the true and universal things about mis and disinformation. And then also hopefully equip you with 3 techniques and 1 tool that might be able to help you navigate what is a very chaotic and confusing information ecosystem, regardless of what language you're in. We're all dealing with this really weird world of constantly updated feeds and algorithms deciding what we're seeing, and being in private messaging groups and on public social platforms and receiving stuff via email and reading on the web, all of these different sources, which brings so many new voices to the foreground, which is a wonderful thing, but it's also really confusing to navigate, and it's hard to kind of figure out those signals of credibility. So that's kind of the plan. Going to give a little presentation, and then I'm really excited and will be grateful to receive your questions and have some discussion after that. So let me share my screen, and we can get started with that portion of things. Okay, there we go. So one of the things you'll notice is, I use the term fake news in the title of this talk, but it's a term that I had used since 2014 and probably deserve a little bit of credit or shame for helping popularize. But it's a term that I think now has kind of outlived its usefulness, and it's become a term that has really been weaponized to describe accurate reporting and real information. And it's kind of fallen out of favor and is not so useful to us right now. And so that's why I wanted to kind of start a little bit here with actually separating out what I think are kind of the 2 most important terms and definitions that we could be using, misinformation and disinformation. So misinformation is, people who are sharing content that is false or misleading, but they don't realize that. They're doing it, maybe, there's a natural disaster and they, heard a rumor that the Red Cross is set up at a school down the street, and they want to share that with all their friends in their neighborhood because that's something that everyone should know. And so there are a lot of motivations of why we might unintentionally share something that's false or misleading. Fear is a big driver. Wanting to help or protect others, sort of putting it out there just in case, in case it's true, maybe you should know this. And a big piece of really why people share things, especially on social media, is it's a representation of who they are, of their identity, of who they consider themselves to be, or a vision of themselves that they would like to represent to the world. And some people just do it because, you know, it's fun. And the information sort of it tickled their fancy. And then there's disinformation, which is, of course, intentionally creating and spreading misleading or false information. And this can be done, you know, for common reasons, financial gain, political gain, you know, to sow discord, or sometimes, again, fun, people who just like to kind of mess with things. And so I think the term fake news is catchy, which is why it was so widely used, but it kind of does a disservice because this is such a wild and diverse universe, really. And you know, that's sort of the next thing here, which is that it comes in, oh, sorry, let me just close this. I have to restart my share here. For some reason, there we go. All right. Oh, I think it'll work now. There we go. All right. So there's a lot of different types of mis and disinformation. And this is for a chart done by an organization called First Draft, which does a great job offering free training and information about this whole world, which you may want to check out their website. But they classified 7 different types of mis and disinformation. And so you can have stuff that's like,
Craig, sorry,
yes.
your screen is not being shared.
Oh, okay. Let me reshare it. Sorry about that. It wasn't switching, and so I didn't think it stopped, but it did. All right, let's do this. Okay, you see it again?
Yep. Now it's in
okay.
full.
Okay, super. Thank you. And hopefully I can advance. There we go. All right. So, you know, you don't necessarily have to memorize all of these types of, you know, false or misleading content, but it's important to get a sense that, you know, sometimes stuff is 100% false. Sometimes stuff is a real photo, but it's been taken from the original context, you know, that it was first taken 3 years ago and somebody reshared it and said, oh, this happened yesterday. And so there's lots of different ways that we can encounter false or misleading content. And sometimes people are intending to, you know, make something up as, you know, it's satire, it's a piece of social commentary, but other people don't get the joke and they think it's real. So we have kind of a diverse element of the false and misleading information. And the other thing that's really important to know is that most of the stuff that falls into mis or disinformation, it's not trying to necessarily be news, which is why fake news isn't such a great term anymore. You know, it can be images, it can be videos, you know, it can be people kind of pushing a hashtag on Twitter. And a lot of it isn't 100% false. And in fact, the stuff that gets the most traction has a little kernel of truth of it. You know, it's misleading. It might be, again, you know, that real image put in a different context. It might be taking, you know, something that is like 85% of what actually happened. A person was here, they said this, but twisting the last little bit of it. And so that's a really important thing to know is a lot of times people talk about, you know, 100% false stuff. And yes, that exists and it's out there and it can spread really quickly. But a lot of times it's stuff with a certain amount of truth that has been, you know, kind of torqued in a way that's misleading. One of the other things, now it's not letting me advance the slides again for some reason. Sorry about that. All right, I'm gonna have to fix this again. And okay, so did it stop sharing? I'm sorry to have to ask again.
Yeah, it's not sharing right now.
Okay, cool. So let's try this again and hopefully that's gonna work this time. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I think what I'm actually going to do is run it like this because when it's going into full screen, it's giving an issue. So let's just stick with this and that way I know I'll be able to advance the slides. So that's kind of like the grounding in, you know, the terms, mis and disinformation, the types that we can see. One of the big reasons why it is so prevalent, and it's not like it's new, it's just like it spreads so quickly now because of social networks and smartphones. But one of the things that it does is it really has a human factor. And this is a universal truth about it, which is that, you know, polarization, whether it's political polarization of, you know, people being not just disagreeing with someone from a different political party, but actively being suspicious of them or, you know, fearful of them, that kind of extreme polarization creates an opportunity to spread false and misleading information. And also human bias, you know, the way we process information, the way we view the world around us, that is subject to, you know, who we are, the information and experiences that we have had as a person, and also some of the ways that we process information, just the way our brain perceives things. And so all of those things can combine to make us more inclined to believe this thing or that thing, or more inclined to reject something. And sometimes we're wrong when we do that. And so, here's an example. This is from a story I did back in 2017. These are, two political websites here focused on the US. Here's a left-leaning one talking about Kellyanne Conway, White is saying she's been fired from the White House. Isn't this great? And then a conservative site saying, hey, she's been fired from the White House. This is terrible. Now, of course, this is not true. She stayed right until the end of the Trump administration. But the thing about this is that during my investigation, I found that these two sites were actually owned by the same person. And so this is an example of somebody who has realized like playing the two sides off against each other is a really effective way for me in this case to make money. This was a couple of guys based in Florida who they initially started with conservative sites, and they ran really big conservative Facebook pages. And then they were like, well, we need to sort of diversify. And if we know how to get conservatives all riled up and earn money from the ads on our sites, why don't we do it to liberals as well? And so this is, feeding that polarization and feeding this bias of taking a false story and just switching a few words to play up how people would react is a way to get this stuff to go and be shared and start to really sink in with people. And this, that element of bias, it's really important, especially, when I talk to journalists, I emphasize this to them as well, because sometimes journalists, because we are sort of information professionals, if you will, we think, well, I can control for my bias. Yes, I'm a human being, but I'm a professional, I'm doing my job. The truth is we are all affected by bias in the way we view the world and the way we process information. And so this is a good kind of summary of one of the most powerful elements of this, which is, we have an irrational loyalty to our beliefs, and we work hard to find evidence that supports those opinions, and we discredit and discount and avoid information that does not. So the stuff that aligns with, deeply held beliefs, that aligns with things we've learned over the years, we welcome that, we believe it, we take it in right away, and we're maybe ready to share it. Stuff that goes against that kind of questions who we are, questions our beliefs, that contradicts knowledge we have and we have accepted, we find ways to not sit there and evaluate it in a sort of, non-biased way. We actually have a natural reaction to want to dismiss it. And this affects all of us. And it is one of the reasons why we have such a deluge of false and misleading information. The other piece here is this media environment. And I mentioned social networks, I mentioned smartphones. It's easy to create and share information. Again, welcomes so many more voices and enables people to connect like never before. There's so many benefits of that, but it's a media environment with social networks and digital media that is really easy to manipulate. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So, as an example, it's very easy to make stuff look popular and look like it's getting a lot of engagement and connecting with people when it's really not. It's easy to buy fake accounts. It's easy to buy likes and views and shares. There's an entire economy built around fabricating engagement, because those signals, when we see something has been shared, 10,000 times, we think, oh, this is really connecting with people. So on that level, there's lots of fake accounts, there's fake engagement, there are people actively trying to manipulate our digital information ecosystem. And it can go and become really kind of, crazily advanced. And so here's an example. This is an Instagram post from a few years ago. We can see here it's an account called Viral Hippo, and they have made a beautiful post. They've made a beautiful black square, right? Like that's the whole post. But the thing about it that obviously is suspicious if we look at it is that has more than 1,500 likes, back when Instagram was still showing likes, right? And so 1,500 likes and a bunch of comments. My favorite comment is, I like the colors used for this photo, which really makes you think maybe this person or this account didn't actually view it. And for anyone there, studying some other languages, maybe you can read that other comment there, a couple others in other languages. So it's English and I think it's Italian. Maybe people can check in. Yes, it is. Okay, Mattia is nodding. So I got that right. Thank you. That would be very embarrassing in this group, huh? And so what's going on here? Well, the simple guess is, okay, somebody bought some fake likes and some fake comments, but it's actually more complicated than that. What happened is that real people with real Instagram accounts signed up to a service that basically they handed over their credentials to their accounts, which you should never do. And so when somebody would then go to that service and say, hi, I'd like to buy some likes and comments, that service would use the login information for real people's accounts, and it would then take those real accounts and use it to put engagement. So they're real accounts giving fake engagement in order to trick real people into thinking that that account has lots of followers and lots of engagement. And, obviously the people who are handing over their credentials, they're getting something in return. For them, there's often a chance to earn money or for them to receive some engagement themselves. And so you have real people taking part in a fake engagement scheme, and it can get far more complicated than that. And so for the average person trying to navigate this world, you can see how it's really confusing. And just to give an example, not really social media oriented, but on Amazon, I'm sure you all look at the reviews before you buy things. I mean, there's an entire economy around fake reviews on Amazon, on Yelp, on all of those kinds of places. And in this case, you can see on the left-hand side here, this is a really common thing. Somebody posted in a Facebook group for Amazon reviewers saying, hey, buy our posture corrector with your Prime account so that it's a verified purchase. Get the product, give us a top 5-star review, and we're going to refund the money you purchased. Plus, we're also going to give you a $10 Amazon gift code. So the person is getting a free product and $10 to Amazon in order to give a favorable review. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the opposite, where somebody's a seller on Amazon and there are competing products that are starting to chip away at their sales. And so they're actually going to pay people to give 1-star reviews to the competing products to knock them further down, because Amazon is going to surface the results based on things like reviews and positive and negative and that kind of thing. So that's where the ecosystem is really being manipulated and creates an opportunity for not just fake reviews, but of course, false and misleading claims. And this is where, we get to the global piece, which is really relevant to this group and to everybody here, which is that, what we have seen really is that this is an issue that is affecting anywhere basically that's connected to the internet, and especially anywhere that has smartphones and social media. This is a truly global issue. And, it can vary from one country to the next in the sense of, you may have a country like Brazil, for example, where WhatsApp is really popular. And Facebook is popular too, but WhatsApp has become, massively, massively important for the information sharing and consumption of people in Brazil. And so a lot of the false and misleading stuff is spreading through WhatsApp in Brazil. And then there are other parts of the world where WhatsApp maybe isn't that popular at all. If you look, I'm in Canada, WhatsApp is not as big of a factor as it is in Brazil or some other countries around the world like India, but Facebook is still very big and popular in Canada. And so depending on the platforms, and then depending on what's going on in politics and society, different issues, different concerns kind of come to the forefront. And you can often sometimes see the same piece of false or misleading information start in one country, but start to spread from one language to the next and hop and jump and get translated and get garbled and, turn out to be even more misleading over time. And so we've been connected through these global networks, and that's also connecting the false and misleading information. And, to give you an example of this, the coronavirus, the global pandemic has been a really defining moment in this world of mis and disinformation, because we are seeing the world, not every country is suffering it to the same extent, but it is a global pandemic. And so because it is something that is connecting everyone, we are seeing false claims about COVID-19 spread from one country to the next. And there's a great project right now called the Coronavirus Facts Alliance. I put the link there at the bottom, which has been tracking using hundreds of fact checkers from around the world. Duke does a great job at the Duke Reporters Lab tracking how many fact checking organizations there are. I believe it's now more than 300 around the world. And what you can see here is 2 examples of false claims. So the one on the left there, holding your breath, is a good test to check whether you have COVID-19. Completely false, has nothing to do with it. But we can see how over time in this visualization on their website, how it jumped around the world and ended up in all these different countries. And, same thing with this anti-vaccine claim about a first volunteer dying, not true. And again, it hasn't spread as much, but started in the US and started to move around the world and gets there. And so it is a global issue. And you can have some things that affect hundreds of millions or even billions of people and be in multiple languages. And this is something that is a big, big challenge, and something that, your group and your focus could maybe help come up with some interesting ideas or at least perspectives on it. And another thing, the last thing that I want to emphasize about this world of mis and disinformation is that there are now kind of professional disinformation for hire outfits out there. They often describe themselves as PR firms or marketing agencies, but basically, they will spread your stuff. They will use trolls, people using fake accounts to attack opponents, to spread false and misleading things about them, to spread things about you. we decided to do kind of a survey looking back to 2011, and we found that, you know, over time, the amount of these kind of so-called information operations attributed to marketing or PR firms had significantly increased. In particular, in 2019, it was a big jump, and last year, this story was published in early 2020, so it didn't have last year's data, but last year's data, you know, again, tons more attributed to it. And in fact, it had the first one that was attributed by Facebook to a Washington, D.C. based agency. They were targeting people in Bolivia, Venezuela, and Mexico. So Washington agency hired by unknown clients, create and manage a bunch of Facebook accounts, pages, and Instagram accounts. They push political messaging in these countries. They spend more than $3.6 million on ads, spreading this kind of politicized content and using fake and misleading accounts to do it. So this is another thing we're countering in this world. You know, to recap that, the stuff that makes successful mis and disinformation, it often has that kernel of truth, or it's tied to something global or that people are talking about, like COVID-19 or an election. It goes after our emotions and our biases, our beliefs, because we are less likely to be rational and skeptical when we are emotional or when it aligns with information we already know or strongly believe in. It exploits this connected digital environment that has lots of benefits, but also is very easy to manipulate. And one of the things that, you know, I mentioned up early on, but is important to emphasize, is that a lot of times it's not like a long fake article. It's often just a meme or, you know, a misleading photo or a video taken out of context. Visual and shareable memes, particularly over networks like WhatsApp or others, are really what moves very quickly. So that's the overview I wanted to give you. And now hopefully that you see the challenges and some of the, the things that we're dealing with. I want to give you some tools and some approaches that can help you navigate this before we take some questions. So I'm going to talk about three things. And, the first two may seem really obvious, but the problem is that people are not pausing and doing them. And so that's just the first general thing I want to say to you, is that it's really important to actually be thinking about the information you're seeing and consuming, and especially the information that you're passing along. You need to be willing to take a moment, to take a breath, to wait and see, to pause before passing it on. And so the best thing that you can do initially, is to take that pause and then to ask yourself some questions about this information that you're seeing. And, again, here, and I put the link at the bottom, and I will make these slides available to you. There's a great guide from First Draft where they talk about photos, for example, of the things that you want to ask about verifying a photo. And this is a step-by-step process. But at the end of the day, you really want to figure out, is this photo or is this video what it claims to be? Do I have an idea of who or where it came from? Do I have an idea of when it was actually captured? They're saying it was from 2 days ago, but is that actually true? And what is the context around it? And these are really basic questions, especially for journalists, that we ask, who, when, why, and particularly for the digital environment, is this the original photo? Is this the first one that we can find online? And just asking questions and taking that hesitation is really, really valuable and important. And it extends beyond photos and videos. When you're dealing with social media accounts, maybe a social media account has shared a video that you're interested in. That's a great opportunity to go and look at the profile page and see who they claim to be. When was the account created? Twitter will show you that. Who are they talking to? Who are their friends? Who are their followers? What kind of conversations are they having? What kind of content are they sharing? Does it make sense with the video that you're looking at? And where do they say they are? And if you're really trying to dig into something, you want to go off that one platform you're on. Maybe it's a Twitter account. You want to see, well, can I find the same person on Facebook? Can I find their LinkedIn profile to see if they use the same photo? Doing that, asking those questions, just taking that time to review it and not just look at the video or the tweet or the content in question, but thinking about the context of who is this coming from and what can I learn about them and sort of who they are and what aligns or goes against what I'm seeing. Similarly, if you're looking at articles and websites, you're reading an article, maybe it's got a really catchy headline. It's really important to, again, be patient, to not react to that headline, to sit there and say, okay, so they're making this claim in a headline. What are they using to back it up? I've never heard of this website. Are they quoting anyone, an authority? someone who might know about this? Are they linking out to sources or citing sources that seem credible that I'm familiar with? A lot of the time people are passing on garbage articles and websites, and I don't mean that by, stuff from a different political point of view. I mean things with truly bad, inaccurate information. They're often passing it on, one, because it aligns with their beliefs, and two, because they haven't taken a moment to say, wait a second, who is actually saying this and what evidence do they have to back it up? That brings us to kind of the second tip here, aside from just pausing and asking those questions, is a really simple approach called lateral reading. The last tip there was to look and see if other websites are saying the same thing. And that's really an example of lateral reading. The idea is you're on one website, you're on one tweet, and it's saying something. In order for you to verify it, to understand more about it, you should get out of that one thing and see what other information you can gather to support it or to refute it. So let me give you an example here. This is from a study that was done at Stanford a few years ago. They had fact checkers, they had history professors, and they had students. And they said to them, all right, we've got two websites here. We've got the American College of Pediatricians, and we've got the American Academy of Pediatrics. And they gave everybody in this study time to figure out and to answer which of these seemed to be the more credible medical organization. And so fact checkers did it, professors did it, students did it. In the end, the professors got it absolutely wrong, the students got it absolutely wrong, and the fact checkers got it right. And that's because the students and the professors did the same thing. No offense to the professors here, by the way, or the students here. I'm not trying to gloat, but they took the same approach where they spent time reading the websites, which makes total sense. You should absolutely read the websites to try and figure out who they are. But if you only read what somebody says about themselves, are you really getting the full picture, right? I mean, if you're talking to someone and you want to learn more about them, you might, hear from mutual friends or other people. And it's the same thing with information online. And so this is where lateral reading comes in, where, for example, if all we did was Google the names of these two organizations, we would get results that start to tell us that they don't behave in the same way. On the left, the American Academy of Pediatrics, we get results for scholarly articles. We see information, about who they are and stuff that sort of is of a more medical bent. You can obviously dive down further and read about that. Whereas on the right, for the American College of Pediatrics, we see a lot of results telling us that this is actually less of a medical organization and more of a political organization. Now, whether you or not you agree with the political stance of the American College of Pediatricians and how it views LGBTQ communities and that kind of thing, the bottom line is that these are not similar organizations. One of them is actually a medical organization that is publishing scholarly research, that is educating pediatricians and that kind of thing. The other is more of an advocacy group. They're fundamentally different, even though their names are very similar. And that's kind of the point, right? So just doing that basic kind of research can give you an example and give you an answer. And so, again, the idea here is you go beyond the post or the article or the website or the tweet that's in front of you, and you kind of see what else you can find to confirm or refute what's out there. You want to get that context. And so a really easy thing to do is, if you're trying to check a news article or a claim, maybe just enter that information into Google News and see if there are lots of news articles about it and see what those articles say. Maybe those articles have differing views and opinions and information, but at least then there's ways for you to get more information about it. If there's a quote or a special or a big fact that is really important, you could paste that into Google or a search engine or the title of an organization and see what you get. And then I would also recommend, again, if you're interested in a Twitter account, don't just stay on Twitter, see if you can find them across other platforms. That's a form of lateral reading, okay? So again, not crazy complicated tips here. The problem is that most people don't do this stuff. They don't take the pause, they don't think, they don't step to the side and start to see, how can I compare and contrast this stuff? Last thing I want to show you is a really essential free tool. It's reverse image search. And maybe some of you are familiar with it, maybe you aren't. You would be surprised how many professional journalists are not familiar with it still to this day, which drives me crazy. So let me give you an example of how it works. Here are a couple of tweets. These actually went out back in the 2018 midterms in the US. And it was somebody claiming that there were buses loaded full of illegal immigrants who were going to vote, okay? And this is like a common sort of false thing you see crop up around elections in the US and in some other countries as well. But the question is, what are these pictures of, right? This account is using these photos to make this claim. How would we actually figure out where these photos came from? And that's what we use reverse image search for. It's a way to search by image instead of searching by text. So Google offers a reverse image search in Google Images. So if you do a Google search, there's tabs along the top and you can click on images. That will take you to Google Images. And all you do is you click on the camera icon there, and you have two options. One, you can download the photo you're interested in or screenshot the photo you're interested in. This also works for videos, by the way. You can screenshot something from a video and reverse image search it. So you can upload it into Google reverse image search, or you can copy the URL of that specific image, not like the full page, but of the image. And then what it's going to do is Google's going to look through its big database of images and say, have we seen this image before? And you'll get results that look like this. So in this case, let me highlight a few things that we're seeing here. So number one, we see, Google has basically guessed a keyword around this image. You can actually change that. If it's like a photo of someone and you have their name, you could enter their name here or another, keyword to narrow the search down. In this case, you see that below that, it's giving you options to search, different sizes of the image. The bigger the image, the more likely that may be the original, the early one, because they get smaller over time as people reshare them. And then below that, we see, not very helpful results from the web, but we do see other images on the right there where Google is saying, hey, I think that image is similar to these image. Are these from the same event? So Google is trying to help you out. But if you would scroll down even further, we kind of get our answer in the Google image search results, which is a bunch of news articles from the pages that include matching images showing us that exact same image that we're looking for. So this takes like all of 2 seconds, to run this search. And we can see here, there's a bunch of articles that seem to have the same image. Let's click on, one of these articles. It's from, a UK tabloid. It's got the photo. And the thing to note right here, of course, is that those tweets are from 2018, whereas this article was published in 2014. So these photos were online and in news articles, multiple news articles, 4 years before this dude put his tweet out. And yes, that is the same image there. We can see it, right? And so within the span of like a couple of minutes, you can often get an answer about an image. Where has it been online? What is it connected to? It is very easy to grab an image from the internet, throw it in a tweet and make some claim about it. But it's also fortunately pretty easy to throw that same image in a reverse image search and see if you can figure out where it really came from. And if you spend the time to do those 3 things, I think you'll find you spot stuff that a lot of other people miss. Especially, if you're in family messaging groups and you have relatives dropping stuff in that you're not sure about, this may be your ticket to kind of debunk that really annoying uncle. Do it politely. We don't need to create family conflict, but you also don't necessarily want people being exposed to false and misleading information. So just to wrap up here, I'm going to leave you with 2 resources. And again, don't feel like you have to rush and write these down. I'm going to share the slides with the folks who organize this and they can send them around to everybody. But on the left-hand side there, this is the verification handbook you heard Eileen mention off the top. We just published a new edition of it last year, focused on disinformation and media manipulation. The short link there on the bottom will take you to it. I got the best journalists and researchers I know to write chapters and case studies. It is a how-to book. It is not overly technical. And if you're interested in this stuff, it would be very helpful. On the right-hand side, I maintain an open Google Doc where I list a lot of tools and some other resources. If you want to nerd out on this stuff and you want to test out a bunch of different reverse image search engines and see what other tools are there, that's there for you to check out and see. And I also have links to some other resources and presentations from me and from some other people in this area. And just as a reminder, those 3 takeaways, pause and ask questions, take a moment to really think about what you're seeing. Go lateral, don't just look at the thing that you're on, step to the side, look for some other places, get that context. And then, if you're dealing with something visual, images and videos, you can screenshot it, you can download it, you can run a reverse image search, and you will be surprised how quickly you might get a result that is really, really helpful and instructive for you. So I'll leave that up so you folks can see it for a couple more seconds. And then I will turn off my screen share, and I would be happy to take some questions and have some discussion. So thank you.